Before the break, we were discussing, bless you, the Undefeated's piece on the year of the black quarterback and the tremendous success we are seeing from many black quarterbacks around the NFL. Bless you again.
Thank you.
Your allergies.
Allergies, I apologize.
Picking up where we left off, joined by senior NFL writer for the Undefeated, Jason Reed. Thank you again for being here with us. And Max, I know you wanted to jump in on the relationship between
coaches and quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Quickly, I want to say what's interesting is the way running has been stigmatized, because the stereotype was, the black quarterback can run. Not always true, Stephen A., right? Like Dwayne Haskins is not right. But although it is interesting, by the way, that suddenly the Giants found that they really do want a mobile quarterback. Happened to be a white guy, and that Dwayne Haskins, for all the stuff he put up, he wasn't mobile enough, so now that's disqualifying suddenly. Didn't used to be this. But it's so even things like running were somehow disqualified. Wait, that's an extra weapon, but that's disqualified. Now that it's been kind of destigmatized, right? Now it's something actually you have to run. An example of people's kind of prejudice for other reasons changing the way they evaluate the sport. What I wanted to say about the coach and the quarterback is this. If I were to ask most people, is the NBA, would you consider that a black league, so to speak? The answer would be yes. And in fact, to the point where they were afraid they were scaring off kind of the white fan base in the middle of the country. So David Stern said you have to wear suits at the press conferences, right? They had a dress code there in the NBA.
That was more residue from the brawl at the Palace.
Well, okay, right. But still, the kind of presentation was very conscious. We need to change the perception of middle America, so to speak, about our league. So because their assumptions are made if it's a black league, what that means about the players. The NFL is not considered exactly that, or hadn't been through the years. And partly I always felt it's because who are the two faces you always see? The coach and the quarterback. Mm-hmm. They were always white. The coach and the quarterback were almost always white. And so even if it's not a conscious decision, an executive or a league twirling a mustache, we're going to keep it white. On some level, I think there was an intuitive understanding. Wait a minute. We're printing money here. We're popular. We're appealing to the middle of the country. And the faces, that now is changing.
Well, at the quarterback level,
right,
but at the coach level, it's still pretty much the way it always was.
Three coaches, zero presidents, and zero owners.
But at the quarterback level,
no question.
The players,
let me piggyback off of Max,
and
then because I want you to cap the thought. Max, I would say to you, you're not wrong, but it goes far deeper than that, at least in the eyes of black people. When you're looking at a league, it's not that people have a problem with something that's perceived as quote unquote a black league, so long as the control is exercised by somebody else. So if you are David Stern, even though the league the vast majority of players were black, David Stern was considered somebody that had an iron fist over the National Basketball Association. And as a result, because of that imagery that he gave off, at least in the eyes of us, white America was more receptive to that. So when you show that there's an absence of control and then guys are able to run amok and act any old way they want to, everything's in danger, which is why the NFL, when the whole Ray Rice scandal came out, and then all of a sudden Pandora's box opened as it pertained to the league turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to some of the domestic violence issues and things of that nature that was going on in the National Football League. Even though in baseball, there was a manager by the name of Bobby Cox in Atlanta, and you had white players that were committing domestic violence. Even in football, when you had coaches getting arrested who was white and getting themselves in trouble. The fact that Ray Rice was caught on video, and that opened the Pandora's box, the league was perceived as being devoid of the level of control that white America thought they should have. It as a result, all of a sudden people would demand that something be done about it. In other words, they were saying, get the house in order. Am I wrong in what I'm saying?
No, you're not, because what you're talking about, the levers of power. And when you have the levers of power still being controlled by the people who have historically controlled them, then the public, the people who put the butts in the seats of the games, they're okay. But if all of a sudden it looks like the control is gone, and yes, then they're going to want to jump in. The fact of the matter is, and you just mentioned it, no team owners, no team presidents, 3 coaches of color. Now, we're at a watershed moment with the quarterbacks, but in terms of the power structure of the league, the coaches and above, it's still the same.
It's still the same.
Jason, can I get your thoughts on something? Because there is progress from what we talked about, the quarterback position. We talked about the stat earlier, the QBR, et cetera. But then explain this to me from your opinion. Why does Colin Kaepernick not have a job still? And quarterbacks are going down like flies with injuries.
Molly, there's no credible argument from a performance standpoint why Colin Kaepernick's not in the NFL.
At least not being interviewed.
Right. I mean, we can debate how many teams he should start for, but there's no credible argument as to the fact that this guy cannot be one of the top 32 or top 64 quarterbacks in the league. The NFL does not want Colin Kaepernick. And when you see guys being signed who can't throw the ball from point A to point B without either throwing an interception or falling down, what it says is that they simply do not want this guy. Now, there are many reasons for that. I think a lot of teams feel like he would be a distraction because the first time we have an incident where something happens in the country and he's going to be the face of that in terms of, going out there and doing things, a lot of teams don't want this. But I also think the reality of it is after he settled his grievance against the league, a lot of these owners and a lot of the people that Steven's talking about who control the levers of power, like, we're done. He got his money. We're not going to deal anything else with him. But there's no credible argument from a performance standpoint.
Well, at least not to bring him in for a workout and see what you're dealing with. I've heard the argument oftentimes. It's been 3 years now since he's played. They don't even think he has it anymore. Well, why wouldn't you? You're not going to kick the tires on a guy? You're not like everyone's quarterback desperate? You're not going to see if maybe you want to bring him in and see if he can still play? The tip-off to me originally was, wait, he doesn't even have a backup job? Because I didn't say right at first, well, he's being, as they say, blackballed, right? When he'd like to be whiteballed. But I didn't say that at first. But, oh, wait, he doesn't have a backup job. And now the tip-off is they won't take a look. They won't take a look at him.
Well, I think for the purposes of this discussion right here, what I would like to see, everybody, listen, Jay-Z took a lot of hits for obviously his press conference with Roger Goodell. It wasn't the greatest looking. It wasn't the greatest look in the world. We all recognize that. But my attitude was, don't sit up there and turn against the man and call him a sellout after one day at a press conference without giving him an opportunity to see what he can do and what he's willing to do. But I'll tell you what the NFL can really, really do. That's be a big deal. Have a black owner in the National Football League. Have diversity within the ownership group so when you're amongst one another as a board of governors overseeing and having purview over the league itself, there's someone in that room who looks like us, who culturally identifies with us, who can relate to our experiences, our trials and tribulations, not just through your prism. Make sure they're in that room when you're taking the positions that you take and you're articulating the positions that you're articulating. Because when that happens, and I'm not talking about just one, I would like to see 2 or 3 minority owners, personally. The reason why, or, some people call it the global majority because we are the global majority. But nevertheless, the point is to be in that room is going to tell us a lot because suddenly now you have to stand front and center. And you have to make sure that you disseminate your message in front of people
but that's
who look
why
differently than you.
You're at, listen.
A seat at the table.
I've said it many times on this show. The reason Kaepernick doesn't have a job, like what is he really protesting? Systemic racism, really, like broadly, okay? The reason he doesn't have a job, partly, is probably because of systemic racism. Why aren't there black owners in the NFL? Really, the reason is black people don't have as much money as white people. And the reason for per capita, like however you want, and the reason for that is you can trace it. Slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, systemic racism. Unless the argument is, no, black people are intrinsically worse at making money than white people. If that's not the argument, then we have to acknowledge that the reason he doesn't have a job is because he's protesting the reason that he doesn't have a job.
Yeah, but and I'll give this to you, Jason, because you should have the last word on this. I will tell you this. You can give me, what is it, Wednesday? I can literally find 3 black owners, majority owners for an NFL team by Friday. If you tell me we're willing to let them in our good old boy network, I promise you it would take me 48 hours and I can find 5 black folks, the Oprahs of the world and Bob Johnsons of the world and others that'll be like this, excuse me, we're interested. You can let us in. Yeah.
Clearly, it's a problem for the NFL because there are not people of color, well, there are not black people who have a seat at that table. And I hear what you're saying. Obviously, you're talking about having the liquidity to say, okay, I'm going to buy an NFL team or be a majority, ownership stake in it. It's something the NFL is aware of. They've got to get better at it. But before that step is made to ownership, get people in the pipeline in those levers of power, team president, COO. There are no team presidents. Kevin Warren was COO of the Minnesota Vikings. He left. You got to start populating those positions before we can really talk about ownership.
Rooney Rule for executives?
Well, I mean, under the Rooney Rule for general manager and some equivalent front office positions, people of color have to be interviewed. But
they don't have to be hired.
They don't have
I
to
think
be
the
hired.
Rooney Rule
No.
is enough.
Yeah.
But one of the issues with the Rooney Rule, the criticism you hear is it's one thing to say we're going to bring in, and you can dot the I's and cross the T's, right? Bring in a candidate. It's another to have talent in the pipeline. Are they offensive coordinators, for example? That is something I have my eye on.
There's only
because
two.
offensive coordinators now have taken over the league, right? And is there some kind of more subtle racism about the kind of person who can think the game on an offensive level, keeping that pipeline, which is the most important one to a head coach, closed off to African-American applicants or would be,
Jason, thank you so much for
another
being
black billionaire, Robert Smith, business billionaire. That's another one. There's several.
He could be one of the first owners.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that
And
could
by
happen.
the way, I know Diddy don't have that kind of money, but he was interested
He
in
was
the ownership
trying, yeah, to
stake.
put a
There
group
are
together.
people with less money than P. Diddy that have ownership stakes in